I don't know who's going to receive this message, but this is my message. You can remove all the corrupt people from DOJ, FBI, State Department, from the banks. You can throw all these people in jail. You can jail George Soros and jail the Rothschilds and everybody else in the room. And if you don't make reforms to the institutions of society, evil, corrupt people are going to take the place of those people you just arrested, and nothing is going to change.
Hey friends, Sean from SGT Report. That was Dave Hayes, praying medic. And just a quick word about the interview before we play it. It got a little contentious between Dave and I in the first third of the interview, and that's probably my fault just due to the fact that I really want some answers from the Q crowd about all of this money printing, $6 trillion in stimulus, and to date, no one has really been able to address it for me adequately. And I did tell Dave's publicist, Paul, that it would not be a softball interview and that I would be asking some tough questions that I really want answers to, because Praying Medic is a Q expert. I did my best to be diplomatic, so I hope you enjoy the interview. Before we begin, though, just a quick word from our sponsor. Collagen may be the closest thing we'll ever get to a real fountain of youth. In fact, many health experts now agree that consuming collagen is as crucial as it gets to renewing and revitalizing how you look and feel. Collagen is the most abundant protein in your body, and it essentially is the glue that holds you together. In fact, after age 20, people produce about 12% less collagen in their skin each and every decade. This means by the time you're middle age, you could be producing less than half the collagen you did in your youth. Even worse, things like poor diet, smoking, pollution, and yes, stress can delete your collagen levels even faster. So visit my site, healthwithsgt.com, and purchase the only collagen on the market that I trust. Make your hair healthy and younger looking, support joint flexibility, strengthen nails, teeth, and gums, promote strong, healthy muscles, tendons, and ligaments, stronger bones, and digestive health. Support your health today with collagen. This is my trusted source. I'll leave the link below this interview. And we're back. Friends, thank you so much for pushing play. You know how much it means to us. I'm really glad to have you guys back. And I have to tell you, I'm really eager to have this interview with Dave Hayes. He's the Praying Medic. He has a very popular YouTube channel. And he's also just published a book. It's called Calm Before the Storm, Q Chronicles Book 1. It's available now on Amazon. And guys, I have to admit, I'm quite conflicted about this subject now, and y'all know that. I did an interview not too long ago with X22, who's also very popular on YouTube. We are going to talk Q, maybe some Q proofs, and we're going to talk about some of my concerns about the Q topic with Dave Hayes, Praying Medic. How are you, Dave?
Doing good. Thank you for having me on the show.
Well, thanks for coming on. So you've been a paramedic for 35 years, is that right?
That is correct.
Thus the name, Praying Medic.
That's the name. And the Praying Medic thing came from when I started out writing back in 2009. I was writing about the people that I was praying for in the ambulance. And I eventually started seeing a lot of people get healed through prayer. And I kept writing testimonies and stories about people getting healed. And eventually I wrote a book called Divine Healing Made Simple. And that was the first book I published under the pen name Praying Medic. And then I published 13 more books under that pen name. But Calm Before the Storm is my first book under my real name.
Well, I'm sure people will be eager to grab a copy. And the topic of Q, I think, has become a very turbulent one at this point. Would you agree with that statement?
Have you noticed? Yeah, I've noticed.
Okay. Well, and, I was very much a Q guy all the way through. And here's where I started to shift a little bit. And I had to re-examine my position. Where I had to start to shift and re-examine my position on Q was with the rollout of this coronavirus and the crashing of the economy. Do you want to just bring us up to speed right now on what you're seeing? You're still very much a Q guy. I guess I might ask, what are some of the current Q proofs that are giving you still so much hope?
I would actually ask you to illustrate to me your concerns so that I can address them in my explanation of the coronavirus.
Well, what I'm concerned about is President Trump is surrounded by people who are true enemies to the Republic, one of which would be Dr. Fauci. We could start there. We could go on to talk about the fact that this pandemic is now, I think, a plandemic, as evidenced by the Rockefeller document from 2010, page 18, lockstep. more top-down authoritarian control on the back of a pandemic. Look, if I can figure this out, the president and the white hats can figure this out. So why is the economy still shut down? Why did we give the bankers $2.2 trillion in stimulus? And I'll take it a step further. Why in the heck is JP Morgan getting away with only approving and funding 6% of the applications for the Paycheck Protection Program when they were given so much that $2.2 trillion? So to me, it just feels like another banker fleecing of this nation.
Okay. Good observations. So I started looking at the pandemic early on. I was following a lot of the mainstream media news sites on Twitter. Most of the Bloomberg and Yahoo and CNN and MSNBC. And I noticed early on, I would say late February, they all in unison began to report hysterical news reports about the pandemic. And to me, it just looked like they were trying to create fear and hysteria. And they would do that for a week, and then they would, the stock market would start to drop, and then they would report on the stock market dropping, and they would report on investors being spooked by the pandemic. And then they would go back to reporting every celebrity, every politician, every person who tested positive was a huge news report. And they created these news cycles of all these people who were testing positive. They would create more fear, more hysteria, and then they would go back to the markets and show the markets crashing further. So I was looking at all this going, this looks like an op to me. It just looked like an op. It looked like the mainstream media was trying to capitalize on this issue, and they were trying to crash the stock market. And I, know that the deep state they have one goal right now. That overarching goal behind everything they do is to try to get Donald Trump out of office. So, Trump has been running on a robust economy, healthy stock market. That's his signature. He's more proud of that than anything else. So since the Mueller hoax failed and since impeachment failed, they had to come up with another plan to try to get Trump out of office. And to me, it looks like they came up with this idea that they would crash the stock market and crash the economy by keeping people at home, shutting down businesses, and instilling fear in investors. Mm-hmm. So I've just been following the whole thing very carefully, and I noticed in March things began to change a little bit. So March 3rd was Super Tuesday, and lo and behold, Joe Biden pulled out a little come from behind win on Bernie Sanders and took a whole bunch of big states on Super Tuesday. Bernie was in the lead up until that point, and then on Super Tuesday, Biden took over the lead. Now, that was on March 3rd. It was only a few days later when the news cycles began to change. And there started to be this talk about, should we quarantine people, right? And on March 11th, the city of San Francisco, the mayor of the city of San Francisco issued an order barring gatherings of more than 1,000 people. Now, this started in San Francisco. This is the very first restriction of people gathering larger than groups of 1,000. And that day, the Golden State Warriors announced they were going to play the rest of the season with no fans. And within 24 hours, several other NBA teams announced they were going to play without fans. Within 48 hours, the NCAA had canceled March Madness. The NBA had canceled the rest of the season. Pretty soon after that, the PGA Tour canceled, NASCAR canceled, Major League Baseball, spring training canceled. Everything's canceled, right? And it all started with the mayor of San Francisco announcing that he was not going to allow gatherings of more than 1,000. He was the first one to put out the social distancing thing. And then it just was a series of dominoes where everything fell in, schools closed, athletic activities down, churches can't meet anymore, right? This whole thing just kind of turned to this mess that we have now. And Trump, Trump has been, and so I always look at this, these things strategically from what I know of Donald Trump, and I study him. I know his personality type. I study personality types as a hobby, and Trump is a very interesting personality type. He is one of the most strategic people that you'll ever see in the public domain. Everything Trump does is strategic. Trump does publicly is he displays a lot of shiny objects to get people's attention looking at something while he's doing something else. He gets your attention over here while he's doing something else over here. So when Trump started doing these daily press conferences, I was like, he's got an agenda here, and it's not the agenda that you think of when you see these pressers. That's not the agenda. He's doing something else. So I kind of sat back and I waited. I was like, and I know, and one of the things you need to understand about Trump is his primary, he's got 2 or 3 primary objectives in his first term as president. Number one was to restart the economy and get a robust economy and get the stock market to take off. Number 2, he wanted to get our troops out of the wars overseas. All right. He did both of those. He's been pretty successful at de-escalating the military conflicts overseas and getting the economy humming. Third thing that Trump is all about is exposing corruption. So when you look at the way that Trump handled the border wall, you can see how he is very strategic, and he always has a hidden agenda that we don't know about, that he's working toward as he's negotiating with his enemies. So the first 2 years that he was trying to build the border wall.
Could I interrupt for 1 second?
Yeah, go ahead.
So since we were on the pandemic or the plandemic, let's just flush that out. Can I get your opinion on this?
I'm gonna come back to that in a minute.
Okay, but I just want to ask if you think the pandemic is being used as cover for deep state arrests, because that's what we keep hearing from the Q people, and it's starting to bother some
Q has
folks.
never said that, and there's a lot of people who have been
conflating information.
Unfortunately, there's been a lot of people on social media running these crazy theories about it's a cover, there's going to be arrests, and there's going to be children being rescued from underground tunnels in New York. It's all BS.
Okay, thank you. We're on the same page there.
Okay. That. Q never suggested it. These people just started running their mouths thinking that they had figured out what was going to happen, and none of it materialized. There's a whole lot of disappointed people because, wow, we thought this was the plan. It's not the plan. It never was the plan. And I think a lot of people learned a lesson not to try to predict the future, or because a lot of this came off of the 10 days of darkness thing. A lot of people were saying, oh, there's going to be 10 days of darkness between April 1st and April 10th. And April 10th is 4/10/20, and big things are going to happen on 4/10/20. They developed this narrative that a lot of things are going to happen in the first 10 days of April. And I kept telling people, I was putting these threads out on Twitter going, hey guys, 10 days of darkness already happened. It happened 2 years ago. It's not going to happen in April. Stop making these predictions. So the 10 days of darkness thing, a lot of people don't understand what that's all about. From the time Q started posting on October 28th, 2017, through December 25th, 2017, the longest Q had gone without posting was 4 days. So Q was on the board pretty regularly, almost every day or every other day. Sometimes, 2 or 3 days would skip between. But there was going to be a longer period where Q was not going to post. Now, at that time, nobody knew how long Q was going to keep posting, because most intelligence insiders on 4chan only post for a couple of days and they're gone. You never hear from them again. I was following FBI Anon in 2016, and FBI Anon did a couple of threads over the course of a couple of days and then was gone. Never heard from again. So no one really knew how long Q was going to be posting at that time. And Q, early on in, I think, around November 9th, Q put up a couple of posts, 10 days darkness. All right. So it, if you follow Q's posts, and Anon asked Q later on, I think it was like December 15th, hey Q, 10 days darkness, when? And Q said shutdown. All right. So that was 10 days prior to December 25th. On December 25th, Q posted a message that started with the number 10. And then there was brackets, 10, 9 brackets. Q was kind of hinting that there's a countdown, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. So that was December 25th. Q did not post again until January 4th, 2018, 10 days between posts. Q went dark for 10 days. Okay, and then came back and just continued with the messages. When I've looked at Q's posts, it's very obvious to me that the 10 days of darkness was simply a warning to Anons that he was going to go off the board for 10 days and then he would come back. But unfortunately, a lot of Q followers developed this theory that in April, there was going to be 10 days of darkness, there was going to be internet shutdown, there was going to be social media shutdown, there was going to be arrests. The coronavirus was a cover for the arrests, and they're going to rescue all these. They just developed all these theories, none of which turned out to be true because they misunderstand Q's posts.
All right, let me just jump in and say something because I want to defend myself here to all the listeners because I'm not anti-Q. I just want to get to the heart of the current narrative because I took a lot of heat when I even began to say, what is the plan at this point? Can we get an update? Because I'm all for trusting a plan, but I'm not for giving trillions more to these criminal bankers. So we can get into that again in a second. I'll throw it back to you. But my concern is that we're seeing a replay of 2008, 2009, this time on steroids, and they don't even have to tell us where the money's going. So when I even began to question the current plan and ask for an update, I'd be attacked in the comments saying, don't you trust POTUS? Don't you trust the plan?
Here is the problem for a lot of people is that they're not following Q's instructions about how to decode his posts. They're not following his instructions. A lot of people will take Q's trip code and put it into the YouTube search bar and come up with videos to watch. Or they'll go to Amazon, put in Q's trip code into the Amazon search bar and come up with books and think, oh, this is what this is all about. Q is all about giving us videos and books to read and watch. Like, no, that's not what Q is about. Q explained to Anons how to interpret and read and apply his posts. And I would say 80% of the people who follow Q have completely ignored Q's instructions. All right. So Q's instructions about reading his posts, it's very specific. He said, when news drops, reread the entire graphic. All right. So Q puts out information in the form of questions, clues, hints, sometimes stringers with letters and things in brackets and links to articles, right? And Q says, when news drops, go back and read my posts, all right? So what a lot of people are doing instead is they're taking Q's posts and they're trying to use them as a crystal ball to read the future. Q never said, take my post and try to interpret the future events based off of my post. Q said, when news drops, go back and look at my post and you'll find me dropping hints about news now 3 or 4 weeks ago or 2 months ago, right? So Q is not here to help us read the future. Q is here to give us information to help us put together a true narrative of history and current events that competes with and debunks the mainstream media's narrative. That's Q's primary objective.
So is my interpretation of the narrative correct? What I just said about trillions for the bankers, unaccountable bankers? I'm very concerned about that, or am I way off base? I'd really like your thoughts on that.
You got a stone in your shoe, and that's fine. We all have issues that we don't like, and I'll get to that in a minute.
Wait a minute. Right. So trillions of dollars to the bankers is a stone in my shoe? Okay. Yeah, so flesh that out for me.
Your shoe. It's your issue. It's not my issue. It's not.
It's actually our collective issue. It's our collective issue as Americans whose currency or money, they'd like to tell us, but it's actually currency, is the Federal Reserve note.
Okay. So hang on a minute. I'm not saying it's not a legitimate concern. What I'm saying is it's your concern today. It's not my concern.
No, I'm just asking what the
concerned
Q.
about.
I'm just asking what the current Q narrative is on that.
Hang on. We all have our own issues. Some people are concerned about human trafficking. Some people are concerned about FISA abuse. Some people are concerned about Clinton Foundation and Uranium One. We all have our different
Well, we're all concerned about all of those things.
Okay. So what I'm saying is, okay, you have a beef with the money that's going to the banks. Okay, I get it. That's fine. I'm not trying to minimize the concern. I'm saying it's your concern. You're more concerned about it than the average person. And I'm not dismissing your concern. I'm simply saying we all have different things we're concerned about. Okay. I'm trying to tell you that that is not the only concern in the world.
No, I know it's not, Dave. But what I'm asking
you is why it's the main concern that we all have.
No, as a Q expert, I'm asking you what the Q narrative is on this money printing.
In order to understand where this plan is going, you have to understand what Q's purpose is. I can't just come out and say, well, this is what's going to happen to the money. We have to, there's a lot of people listening to this show. Now, look, I want to address your concerns, but there's going to be thousands of people listening to this show, and they have concerns, and a lot of them don't know anything about Q. So as I answer your question, I need to provide some background information for people who don't know anything about Q. And I'm just 2-minute explanation. This is how you interpret Q's posts. When news drops, go back, look at previous posts. It'll give you information about current events. Now, to your question about the banks. So are you familiar with what the Treasury is doing with respect to purchasing? Treasury and the central bank, Federal Reserve, are doing with respect to purchasing assets in the wake of this essentially quantitative easing?
Well, I'm familiar with theories that Trump has essentially nationalized the Fed, and he's going to allow the Fed to print the currency into oblivion and leave them holding the bag. And every expert
the Treasury prints currency.
But every expert I've talked to said this is not going to end well for we the people. So that's what I'm concerned about.
So there's a lot of people who think this is not going to end well. All right. So would you agree that Donald Trump is a highly strategic person?
Yeah, but would you agree that he also has, as his current U.S. Secretary of Commerce, the former managing director of Rothschild and Company, Wilbur Ross? So, I mean, okay. I just try to take the quantifiables too. Well, because I don't trust the Rothschilds. They own the central banks.
The Rothschilds are not working for Trump.
No, but that's one of my concerns. You asked if I trust, are you asking me if I trust President Trump implicitly? 100%?
I am asking you if you agree that Trump is a highly strategic person.
Yeah, I do. I think he's a highly strategic person, and I think that we were winning and they played the pandemic.
When he signed the executive order on December 21st, 2017, authorizing the Treasury Department to seize the assets of people and organizations, corporations, involved in human rights abuse, human trafficking, and corruption. That day, Eric Schmidt stepped down as CEO of Google. Since then, we've been tracking resignations. 2018 had a record number of CEO resignations. 2019 broke the record of 2018 for CEO resignations. So why are all these CEOs? Bill Gates stepped down as CEO of Microsoft 3 weeks ago. Why are all these CEOs resigning? They're resigning because a lot of these corporations are corrupt. They're being investigated by the DOJ. And the CEOs, CFOs, and COOs are getting out before the hammer falls. And they're getting out. So now let's switch to the Rothschilds. So Trump signed the executive order on December 21st, 2017. A month later, end of January, the Rothschilds put up their Austrian hunting estate for sale that had been in their family for 143 years. Since then, you can go on Sotheby's and a lot of other big name auction sites and find tons and tons of Rothschild's family heirlooms that have all been auctioned off. The Rothschilds have been having a fire sale for the last 2 years, trying to liquidate their assets because they're running out of money.
I think that's a big claim. How do you quantify that? I remember the hunting estate being put up for
All
sale,
right.
and I
I
even did a video
go
about
on,
it because it was
go on.
probably being used for human trafficking and human hunting, to be honest with you. But
Well,
quantify
okay.
the
What I'm telling
quantify
you
that.
is, I have been on these auction websites, Sotheby's and other auction sites, where they're selling hundreds and thousands of Rothschild's family heirlooms. They're hunting the deer heads and all the weird rugs that sit in their places, in their hunting lodges, and all these crazy family heirlooms. They've been auctioning these things off for 2 years. Why would the Rothschild family be auctioning off all their family heirlooms?
All right. Well, again, we're into high octane speculation because the way I look at the big picture, these people have owned the central banks for hundreds of years at this point. Really, I mean,
Yes, they have.
100 years in this country. So we're talking about multi-generational banking wealth. It'd be pretty
Right.
hard to wipe that
So
all out in a couple of years.
I'm simply trying to give you evidence. Now, it's circumstantial evidence. It's not direct evidence, but I'm trying to give you circumstantial evidence that helps paint a picture of what's happening behind the scenes that we can't see.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that you can look at, objective facts that kind of hint at different things. So, sealed cases on pacer.gov. Pacer.gov is a website that holds all the cases in federal courts around the country, right? And it's an objective fact that there are over 160,000 sealed cases on pacer.gov right now. And that number started massively increasing in 2017. Typically, on average, there was about 1,000 sealed cases on any given day in federal courts around the country, and it's now 160,000. So you have to ask yourself, well, that's kind of weird. What's going on? Who are the U.S. attorneys that are impaneling grand juries and getting indictments and piling up all these sealed cases? It's just another piece of the puzzle. It's an objective fact that if you put into the puzzle, you have to account for, like, what's going on here? Why all these sealed cases? So going back to the Federal Reserve and the Treasury. All right. Before he was elected president, Trump talked quite extensively about the gold standard. I posted a couple of interviews with him on Twitter, where when he was a candidate, he was on a show and they asked him about his feelings on the Federal Reserve and his feelings on going back to the gold standard, and his eyes lit up when he was talking about going back on the gold standard. So I've had a lot of dreams from God, where God has shown me things about gold and silver in the future and stock markets. And it's very long. I wrote a book about it called A Kingdom View of Economic Collapse, where I kind of explain a lot of the theory of economics, how the central bank works, how the Treasury Department works, how they buy and sell assets, how the debt increases and all this. And I'll just make it really short. I believe Trump knows that the Federal Reserve, the central banking system, is corrupt beyond belief. It's been corrupt for a long time. And very wealthy, powerful people are the only ones who benefit from the central banking system. I believe that, and to your point, Trump hired Steve Mnuchin, Wilbur Ross, a lot of people who were Goldman Sachs people. Heck, he hired Steve Bannon. Bannon was former Goldman Sachs. A lot of Wall Street people. But what he did was he hired them and gave them a massive pay cut, because from the money these guys are making on Wall Street, working for Goldman Sachs or working for whoever, they're making about $100,000 a year now, compared to several million that they were, plus bonuses, back before Trump hired them. All of these people had to give something up. They had to give up a huge paycheck and a lot of benefits to go to work for Trump in the White House. And I don't think anyone came on board in Trump's administration, anyone he has around him right now, that is not in this because they believe in Trump's vision of reforming the institutions in government in America. I think after the 2020 election, because Trump can't run again for re-election after that, I think we're going to see major reforms to the to the structures of government, to the structure of the Federal Reserve, the structures of different, Department of Agriculture, Department of Health. I think there's going to be major reforms coming. I think that Trump is planning on neutering the Federal Reserve. That's kind of what Q has hinted at, that they're going to restructure the Federal Reserve in such a way that Trump and his team of people have a lot more control over it, and that the money is not just going out the window to the Rothschilds and the cabal anymore. That's what I see Trump doing. And having this, the quantitative easing, printing another $2 trillion and going to the banks, I think that this is all shiny objects. I think it's shiny objects, and I think that Trump has a plan that is going to, it wouldn't surprise me if he ends up doing something that crashes the entire central banking system, just collapses the central banks, and they implode. And a lot of the bigger banks implode. JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, they're gone because the entire banking system is corrupt from top to bottom. Mm-hmm. And Trump knows that, and he has to fix that. So I would not be surprised if he's planting explosives inside the banking system right now to just demolish the whole thing and start over again.
Figuratively speaking.
Yeah, figuratively, not literally.
Not WTC style.
Figuratively. I think Trump knows how much corruption is involved in the banking system, and he is going to have to just level it and start over again with something new. And look, if we go back on the gold standard, which Q has hinted at, and Trump, I know that Trump is a big fan of the gold standard. If you go back to the 1800s, all currencies were issued at that time by local and state banks. The federal government did not issue currencies. We're on the gold standard because you could take in a note that was issued by a local bank or a state bank, and you could take it to them, and they would exchange it to you for an amount of gold or silver if it was a silverback certificate. Back then, all currency was based on a weight of silver or gold, and the issuing agencies were local and state banks. There were no federal banks, and there was no Federal Reserve, and there was no federal printing of currency. If we go back on the gold standard, I think we're going to go back to something similar to that. There's a lot of theories about what that would look like. There's a lot of proposals. I don't know what Trump's plan is. And when people say trust the plan, okay. When Q says trust the plan, Q is not saying we're going to give you every detail of the plan, and we're going to explain it in all the detail, and we're going to give you all the draw little diagrams, and we're hope that you're going to be okay with our diagrams and how we have this thing all graphed out. We don't get to know the plan. That's the problem. Is people see the news, they see the headlines, they see these events, and think, well, that's not what I was expecting the plan to look like. Well, no, it's not. It's not. I have no idea, and I have no expectations of what the plan looks like. Now, I'm talking about Trump, basically getting rid of the current banking system and starting over again. That's 100% speculation. If that doesn't happen, I'm not going to be disappointed because I don't know what the plan looks like. I have seen enough of what Trump and his people are doing to end the wars overseas. Jeff Sessions, although a lot of people talk crap about Jeff Sessions, has done the country a massive favor in finally addressing human trafficking, drug trafficking, weapons trafficking. Sessions closed down a lot of those rat lines and has cleaned up a lot of the corruption. Now, Trump is furthering that, and Attorney General Barr is furthering that with the current drug interdiction that they're doing. They're basically going up against the drug cartels in Central and South America, and they're taking them on man to man. So I'm looking at all these different things, and I'm seeing that what I see Trump doing, I like. I can't complain too much about what I've seen him doing. This whole thing with this money that Congress is approving, yeah, it's a lot of money. It's trillions of dollars. It's adding on to the debt. I get it. That's a valid concern. But I've seen Trump in the past do things that don't appear to make sense. Now, when I was telling you early on, before I was interrupted, when Trump was negotiating with Congress about building the wall, everyone thought Trump actually was going to try to get Congress to fund the border wall. And that was never his plan. You know how we know that? Because in March of 2018, unbeknownst to anyone, Q starts dropping posts on the board about Red Castle, Green Castle. And it was at a time when Trump and the military, well, Trump was talking about the border wall. And it was a big issue. And a bunch of us started doing research, and we kind of came up with, it's funny. There's an Army Corps of Engineers outfit in Greencastle, Indiana. And the Army Corps of Engineers has a red castle as its logo. And we were all like, is Trump going to build a freaking wall using the Army Corps of Engineers in the military? This was in March of 2018. So pure speculation, right? We didn't know what Trump was doing because he'd never talked about it. All he was doing was hammering Congress on funding the wall. Going after Nancy Pelosi, going after Chuck Schumer. You guys just want open borders. You want drugs and human trafficking. You don't care about our people. You don't care about our economy. You just want our country flooded with illegal immigrants, drugs, and our kids trafficked away. Trump hammered that theme for 2 years. Then in January of 2019, January 4th, Trump finally publicly said, you know what I think I'm going to do? I'm going to build a wall with the Army Corps of Engineers and use the Department of Defense funding. The next day, the New York Times wrote an op-ed, scathing op-ed, calling Trump's plan illegal and idiotic and stupid. And you can't build a wall on the border. We're using the military. That's illegal. You can't do it. That was the first time Trump talked publicly about building the wall with the military. But we know, because of Q's post 9 months earlier, that was the plan the entire time. Trump was having all this conversation with Congress, getting everybody thinking that taxpayers, through congressional appropriation, were going to fund the wall. And Trump was never planning on having Congress fund the wall. He knew they wouldn't. He simply wanted to expose their corruption and their hypocrisy. Trump is doing the same thing with his daily pressers, with Birx and Fauci. Now, I saw these people on there. Denise saw them. We're like, these people are swampy, National Institutes of Health. They're just part of the medical technocracy who have been running roughshod over us for decades. And Trump is giving them a platform. Now, why is Trump giving them a platform? Well, Trump gives a platform to people for a number of reasons. With people like that, the reason he gives them a platform is so he can expose any illicit, illegal, immoral, or unethical agendas that they bring to the table. So it didn't take people very long to figure out what Fauci's deal was. Everyone's like listening to this guy going, wow, this dude is seriously got some
conflicted, at least.
Yeah, he's got some he's ethically conflicted.
Mm-hmm.
And so is Birx. And as these press conferences go on, you can see more and more, like the modeling. Hey, come on out, show us your models, show us your predictions and your prognostications about how much infection there's going to be and how many people are going to die. And they had all these overinflated estimates. And then the real numbers come in, and they're proven to be much lower. And those experts are proven to be not so accurate in their predictions. Now, Trump jumps on board early and starts backing hydroxychloroquine.
Right.
Now, Trump, the system, the deep state, set Trump up in an environment where he had no expertise. That was their trap. They wanted to trap him into an environment where everybody around him had the expertise and he knew nothing about it. Well, what they did not account for is the fact that Trump has always had really good information. He has good intelligence sources. They did not realize that Trump was talking to medical experts who are friends of his, who are giving him advice. And I'm sure a couple of those doctors said, hey, Trump, back hydroxychloroquine as the cure for coronavirus. And he's like, are you sure? And they're like, trust me, you back hydroxychloroquine and watch the studies come out that will vindicate you and make those people look like idiots. So Trump, a non-medical expert, starts backing hydroxychloroquine. They are backing all this other stuff, stay at home, social distancing, all these crazy models that turned out to be wrong. And their credibility is dropping. Every single day, their credibility is dropping because their predictions and what they're saying, and then they're having to backtrack and retract things that they said and correct things that they said. Has Trump had to correct anything that he said so far on the coronavirus? Not one thing. Not one thing. Trump was initially criticized as being ineffective, reacting too late, too little too late. Didn't have enough supplies, didn't anticipate, not enough testing, not enough this, and all this other stuff. And of course, Trump was had on this thing in spades. Days after the first patient with coronavirus got off a plane from China, he had the border sealed off and he was not allowing flights coming in out of China anymore. 10 days. He was totally on top of this. So, and now we have this dust up with the World Health Organization. World Health Organization is corrupt. And now the world is finding out how corrupt the World Health Organization is. They have been pushing Chinese talking points the whole time. Up until the day before that first person stepped off a plane on January 15th, who had coronavirus and stepped into the United States, on January 14th, the World Health Organization was telling people that there was no evidence of human-to-human transmission of COVID-19. The day before, January 14th. January 15th, that first person comes off a plane from China who has coronavirus and comes into the US. January 15th, the very same day, Nancy Pelosi transmits the articles of impeachment to the Senate, which she had been hanging on to for a month. January 15th, also, Trump signs a trade agreement with China, phase 1. Also, so you have three things that collided all on the same day. The first person with coronavirus came in from China into the US. Nancy Pelosi sends the articles of impeachment to the Senate, and China signs a trade agreement with the US. Now, we know that China did not want that trade agreement. China wants Joe Biden to be our president so that China can continue raping and pillaging America at our expense. Trump has been standing up to China, and he's making them pay a lot of money in tariffs. So the coronavirus thing, what they did was, it's a pandemic. They planned this thing out. Now, let me go back to what I was talking about with March. If you look at the timeline of everything as it's rolling out, one of the things that Trump is accused of by the media is being distracted in the early stages of the coronavirus because of impeachment. In fact, Mitch McConnell actually came out and said, yeah, I think Trump was probably distracted by impeachment when this whole thing started. Actually, that might have been their plan. They knew that the coronavirus was coming over from China. They knew it. That's why Nancy waited to drop the articles of impeachment on January 15, because they wanted Trump to be distracted with impeachment when the coronavirus was spreading. They were hoping that Trump would not have shut down travel to China, and the coronavirus would have infected the country and killed a few million people. But Trump was not distracted. He shut down travel from China, then to UK and Europe, and he shut down travel and he got on it real quickly and got everything under control. That was not what they planned for. They were planning on killing a few thousand people, doing the social distancing, shutting down businesses, shutting down the stock market. They were planning on the stock market going down to 10,000. And they were probably planning on 100 million people losing their jobs, maybe killing 5 or 10 million people. That looks to me like they were hoping that would have been the plan, and Trump would have been gone. There would have been no way Trump would have got elected if that would have happened. So, here's the reality. When Q says patriots are in control, it doesn't mean there isn't a battle. It doesn't mean that there isn't a deep state and that they're not trying actively to destroy Trump and destroy our country. They are pulling out all the stops to get rid of Trump, to crash our economy, and to kill as many of us as they can. That's their plan. Now, when Q says patriots are in control, what he's saying is that patriots have the upper hand in the battle. That patriots, we have, the good people, have all of their communications, all their emails, text messages, all their communications. NSA is scooping it all up and giving it to Trump because a lot of these people are under FISA surveillance. So it's legal. Trump has a legal right to get this information. Trump knows what they're planning weeks before they try to pull it off. He knows what's going on. So Trump is, with Birx and Fauci, he's exposing corruption. World Health Organization has been exposed as a fraud. Now Trump gets to defund the World Health Organization. And if the National Institutes of Health and the CDC do not get their act together, Trump's going to expose their corruption. Now, Harvard yesterday. Trump has been talking about Harvard and the money that they took from the government and how they kind of squeezed out a bunch of smaller institutions and organizations from getting money. Trump said, oh, you know what? They got $40 million in endowments. We need to look into that. We need to investigate their endowments. Harvard is corrupt as can be. They have been taking billions of dollars from China and Saudi Arabia and a lot of other countries.
And so people, I don't know how many people know this, but I think the Harvard endowment is it $40 billion?
It's 40 billion. I think it's either 40 million or 40 billion. I can't remember.
And Yale's endowment is like 30 billion. Yeah, so that's a stroke of genius if they're going to actually look into those endowments and start to track them.
Every single thing that Trump brings into this equation, he is exposing corruption. And I guarantee you the corruption in higher education is going to be exposed. It'll go to UCLA, USC, it'll go to...
Well, Yale is skull and bones.
They're all going to be on the radar now for where there are going to be people looking into their finances and finding out about corruption.
Can I ask you something, though? All right, let me just ask you this. And this isn't antagonistic. This is just, I'm really curious about where we stand now. So 25 million jobless Americans, something like that. These lockdown orders are just ridiculous. And I had a glimmer of hope given to me just a week or two ago when President Trump said, let's get this thing back open around May 1st. Yep. Now we have the Georgia governor wanting to open the state by May 1st, and Trump is warning him to maybe not do that. Where do we stand on this thing? Because we can both agree that the numbers are conflated. The World Health Organization is corrupt. Bill Gates is part of this. He wants the whole damn thing shut down for 18 months, and he wants us all to wait for him, to be our savior, to bring us a vaccine. Shouldn't this thing be opened back up immediately if we want to save the economy and get people back to work?
Nope, because there's a bigger plan. So what is Trump always trying to do? He is trying to leverage himself into a better position and leverage his enemies into a position of, a disadvantageous position. Always. Everything Trump is doing, he is putting his enemies in a disadvantageous position. So with reopening, does Trump have the authority to tell governors and mayors to reopen their cities and states? Yes, he does. So Mark Levin did a show, I think it was last Sunday, where he went through the Constitution and looked at all the articles in the Constitution and then looked at the charter for the Department of Commerce. And in fact, the Department of Commerce has full, total regulatory control over all aspects of intrastate and interstate commerce. So you cannot buy and sell in contravention to the regulations of the Department of Commerce and Department of Trade. So the Commerce Department is the ultimate authority to decide when businesses are or are not allowed to transact businesses. The governors don't actually have the authority. That we have a dual sovereignty issue, so states have sovereignty over some things, Federal government has sovereignty over others. Anything that has to do with intrastate or interstate commerce is completely at the discretion of the federal government, Commerce Department, and ultimately the president, because Commerce Department is part of the executive branch. So Trump absolutely has the authority, if he wants to tell every business in this country, you can open up tomorrow. He could do it if he wanted to. But he's not doing it. Why is he not doing it? Because there are a whole lot of corrupt, swampy mayors and governors who need to be exposed. So the governor of Michigan, for example, a little Hitler just waiting for an opportunity to put on her jackbooted thugs on the streets and have them go and arrest people for going to the park and pushing their kids on a swing, right?
Gretchen the tyrant.
Right. There's a lot of little tyrants around the country, and Trump is giving all these tyrants an opportunity to expose themselves. And I guarantee you, every one of those mayors or governors, de Blasio, he puts up his snitch line on the internet. Hey, you want to rat out your neighbor? Send us a little link or a photograph, and we'll go and have the police arrest him. All of these little dictators are all being exposed, and you have to look at the big picture. Okay. Yes, it is horrible that people are losing their jobs and their businesses are being shut down. I get it. I absolutely get it. It's terrible. But here's the thing. Trump would not do this if he was not absolutely convinced that he could rebuild the economy and rebuild these jobs and rebuild everything better than it was before the shutdown. This is what just speculation. I suspect Trump got together with Mnuchin and, Larry Kudlow and a bunch of, his friends who are economists and experts. And he said, look, they've kind of got us over a barrel because they pushed this social distancing thing and the demand to shut down businesses and social events. And if we go against their advice, we're denying science. We're denying the advice of the scientific experts. Mm-hmm. That is a really bad position to put themselves in. It's a lose-lose situation. So I guarantee you, Trump had a lot of meetings with his people and said, okay, what if we shut down everything for a month? Can we rebuild the stock market? Can we rebuild the economy and jobs before the November election? And they penciled it all out and they looked at the statistics and analyzed everything and said, yeah, we can do it. We can rebuild it before the election if we shut it down for a month. So I think that Trump calculated that he could save face by consenting to the will of the scientific experts and do the shutdown, knowing and planning that he would have to rebuild the stock market and the economy and the jobs before the November election. Mm-hmm. And if he does that, he gets his face up on Mount Rushmore. And it's not about him getting up on Mount Rushmore, but I think Trump took a calculated risk with his experts telling him, look, let them destroy this or partially destroy it. We'll rebuild it. We can do it. And that's been Trump's message now on Twitter for the last 2 or 3 days is, yeah, they destroyed our economy. They killed your job. Those people, not me, because Trump from the very beginning said that when Fauci and Birx recommended lockdown, social distancing, Trump said, I'm taking their advice. This is not on me. This is on them. I'm just doing what they say is the best because Trump is not the expert on this. So if it fails, it's on them. If it succeeds, it's on him. Mm-hmm. Because Trump is going to have to bring this back and make it succeed. And he will. The stock market will be back to normal. The people that lost jobs and lost their businesses, they're going to have to suck it up. And it's painful. But they will create new jobs. They will create new businesses. Trump has been bankrupt more times than anybody that I know. And when one thing fails, you go and start something else. Yeah, and it's unfortunate.
Well, it's tragic.
We're in a war.
It's
We're
tragic
kidding.
because we're seeing tyrants like Gretchen tell people, sorry, you're going to lose your business. Sorry, you're going to lose your restaurant. Shelter in
Yeah.
place.
Well,
It's
sometimes you have to expose evil. Part of Q's operation and Trump's operation is to wake people up as to how evil these people are that are in control. And the governors who are just acting like little Hitlers, their evil is being exposed. The mayors who are doing this, their evil is being exposed. And the people have every right to vote them out of office, or if they like living under a dictatorship, vote them back in again. Ultimately, it comes down to the will of the people. And Trump is, I think, doing his best to expose dishonesty, deceit, corruption, and the pure evil of these people. Because these politicians, Nancy Pelosi and all these other people, they do not care if your business goes under. They don't care if you lose your job. It's not their problem. They've got your taxpayer money funding them to keep their ice cream in their refrigerators full. So they don't care. And Trump, every day, Trump is exposing another layer of corruption. It is sad, but we're in a war. This is a second revolutionary war. We are taking our country back, and as Steve Bannon said, if you think they're going to give you your country back without a fight, you are sadly mistaken.
Well, I agree with you there. And let me ask you this.
Yeah,
well, let me. Okay, we've spent about an hour on the line here, and I think you've shared your views perfectly well, and I'm really not at odds with any of those. I just want to let you know where I was coming from, and then let's just flush that out. So we have one of the newer Q posts here, and I'm totally in line with this one, Q post 3986, and this is actually from Anonymous, saying, ex-military here, Q, please don't let us down. We were willing to die then and still willing to die now. Do us proud, please. And Q responded, for God and country, brother, Q. And I think that that really sums up where I'm at here on this thing, because I want to see the arrests of the bad guys, right? I want to see the deep staters indicted and arrested, and that's what we're waiting for. But just so you know where I was coming from on the whole banking and the trillions and the economy, when they played their pandemic card, see, because I viewed everything the way you did, we were winning. So they played their pandemic card. And in my view, they were holding Trump over a barrel. So print, print, print. As the economy was crashing, stocks were crashing by design. They had the president over a barrel. And one of these key figures here, one of these Dr. Evil figures, is Bill Gates. So then I see the bigger picture, UN Agenda 21, mandatory vaccinations, crash the economy, usher us into a one world currency situation. That's where my concern is. And it's kind of biblical in the sense of the mark of the beast. Bill Gates is the figurehead for this idea of everybody's going to have to take a mandatory vaccination. You may need a certificate for travel. His words, not mine. So really New World Order Orwellian stuff, which gives me tremendous pause because the man still walks free. So I just wanted you to know where I'm coming from. That's sort of my view of the big picture, which is very biblical in the sense of the book of Revelation, mark of the beast. We know who the New World Order is. And so I was seeing this plan unfold that way, and it really, really concerns me. So I'm eager to hear your flip side of it, which is a much brighter version.
Yeah, I look. I understand. End times. I studied biblical prophecy for years, and I totally empathize and understand that point of view. The issue that I have with that particular view of the future or that narrative is that a lot of Bible scholars have built a view of the future from the book of Revelation and from other, book of Daniel and other prophetic books, based on historical events over the last 100 years. So you have all these wars in Europe during the 18th century, French Revolution, you have American Revolution, and then you have World War I, and then you have World War II, and you have the atomic bomb. And those events, all those wars, have greatly impacted Christian theology, and particularly the view of the end times. The establishment of the CIA in 1947, the establishment of the State of Israel, and then this building of the New World Order, secret societies, the assassination of Kennedy, 9/11, all the wars going around in the country, around the world. Now, the interesting thing about the wars is if you look statistically at death due to war, we have been living in, relatively speaking, about 75 to 80 years of peace. If you look at the death rates from World War I, World War II, and just look at the ramp up of death, and then after the end of World War II, death rates plummet, and they've been very low, relatively speaking, compared to World War I and World War II. A lot of people don't understand the fact that we've been living in a relative time of peace as far as deaths from war are concerned. Now, we have all these, the Afghanistan war, the war in Syria, and wars in North Africa and different places, but the death rates from those wars, even Vietnam War, were minuscule compared to World War I and World War II. Nevertheless, a lot of Christian theologians have continued to rely on this view of the future that has the New World Order taking over, the one world government being installed, the one world currency, the rise of the Antichrist and all that. So the problem I have with that right now is that I'm watching the New World Order be dismantled. Trump is arrested the Saudi princes was the first thing that happened, right? So the Saudi princes, the Rothschilds, and George Soros, and families like the other wealthy families, Rockefellers, they have pretty much controlled the majority of global events, controlled organizations, controlled the banks, controlled education, controlled everything. And the Rockefellers have kind of been, their power has been removed to a large degree. Saudi royal princes, power has been removed. They all got arrested. In fact, a month ago, I think another 300 members of the royal family and Saudi businessmen got arrested, more of them in another corruption crackdown. So the puppet masters, I'm witnessing the puppet masters being taken out. Now, we're all waiting for George Soros and Rothschilds and other people to be arrested. And the big thing is, they're walking free. Why aren't they in jail? This is not right. This is not justice. Well, here's the thing. And I don't know who's going to receive this message, but this is my message. You can remove all the corrupt people from DOJ, FBI, State Department, from the banks. You can throw all these people in jail. You can jail George Soros and jail the Rothschilds and everybody else. And if you don't make reforms to the institutions of society, evil, corrupt people are going to take the place of those people you just arrested, and nothing is going to change.
Right.
The American and European and other governments have created a system that propagates corruption. Communist Party of China, really good example. It doesn't matter which puppet the Communist Party of China puts in, they could replace Xi tomorrow and they would still have a corrupt regime.
Well, Macron was a Rothschild banker. Yeah, I mean, it's always a puppet.
Exactly. So the one of the problems is there's a whole lot of people out there who just want to see arrests. That's all they care about. I just want Hillary arrested. I want George Soros arrested. I want this person arrested, that person arrested. Then I'll be happy. Then I'll be fine. Okay, that's fine. You're free to feel that way if you want to. I'm just telling you, if you arrest a dozen corrupt people, it's not going to make any difference, because there are going to be more corrupt people come in and take their place, and nothing is going to change except you're going to feel good because a few people got arrested. That is not what this is about. The plan is about reforming the institutions that perpetuate corruption over centuries. So there have to be changes made in our system of government. And because we are a nation that is supposed to be governed by the people. It is the ignorance of average people that has allowed corruption to propagate. The reason why corrupt people get away with what they do is because the people, the sheep, are sheep. They're not awake. They don't know what's going on. They don't know how corrupt Hollywood is. They don't know how corrupt the media is. They don't know about corruption in Harvard and Yale and higher education. They don't know about corruption in Washington, D.C. People are, for the most part, they're blind. They do not understand the severity of corruption. If they did, they would demand changes. They would stop going to the movies and stop buying John Legend's CDs and MP3s. They would stop going to Robert De Niro's movies. They would not support Harvard anymore, right? But the people don't know about the severity and the depth of corruption. So Q's operation is to help people wake up to the truth of corruption. The first part of Q's operation for the last 3 years has been, it's a public information campaign. It is designed to help people wake up to the truth that there's evil and corruption in all parts of society, and it needs to be dealt with. And as the people who are supposed to be we the people, we're the ones responsible for demanding reforms to institutions like colleges. We're the ones responsible for electing people in Congress and our senators and our governors and mayors. So it's difficult to wait for the arrests, but the first part of the plan, as I understand it, is it's information. Now, we're going to get documents declassified at some point. Now that they got rid of Dan Coates, who was a sleeper in the government, and they've got Rick Grinnell in as the Director of National Intelligence. With Rick Grinnell working with Attorney General Barr, we should start getting documents declassified. They took away some of the redactions on Carter Page's recent FISA thing. That's kind of an example of some of the declassification that is going to come. The declassification of documents related to Spygate is going to objectively prove to average people that there is a degree of corruption in the FBI, Department of Justice, CIA, State Department, and the White House under Obama. So FISA is the start, because when FISA-related documents are declassified and people can read them for themselves, they can see for themselves that there's corruption in all these government agencies and all these people who worked in the Obama administration. That is going to help normies understand that, hey, you know what, everything, like, we voted for all these people and we thought these people were great, and they're actually kind of like scumbags. Right. Like Trump has been saying, Jim Comey, and at top level of the FBI, they're scum. So declass has to come along with some indictments. I think we're probably going to see some indictments relatively soon. I'm not going to make a prediction on when. Reasonably certain they're going to be FISA-related indictments. And that'll take out people like Comey, Clapper, Brennan, McCabe, Susan Rice, Sally Yates, Loretta Lynch, all those people in the FBI, DOJ, State Department, CIA. They're going to be they'll be the first on the chopping block for the indictments. Now, we know for a fact that John Huber's investigation of all matters related to Hillary Clinton, so the Uranium One scandal and corruption at the Clinton Foundation, Huber's already done with that investigation, and they've got the indictments sealed, and they're just waiting to unseal them. Barr told us Huber's investigation is over, and they're just waiting to bring those to fruition. And then we've got the investigation of the Department of Justice into the accomplices of Jeffrey Epstein. So the day after Epstein was found dead in his cell, the Department of Justice created a webpage and said, oh yeah, by the way, if you're one of Epstein's accomplices, yeah, don't rest too comfortably, because and DOJ said, we're asking for witnesses and victims to come forward and give us information about crimes related to Jeffrey Epstein and his accomplices. So the people who were Epstein's accomplices should not be resting too comfortably because the DOJ is investigating them right now and has been for quite a while. So it's hard to wait for the arrests, but I look at these things and I try to rely really on information that I know is verifiable. If Attorney General is saying, Huber's investigation is completed, we're just waiting on the indictments, or if he says Durham's investigation is going along great, we're going to see some things in late spring, early summer, I take that as a pretty good measure that things are moving along. I do not like to rely on internet rumors and things that people pass me in messages on Twitter and unverified information, because it's just, there's just a lot of urban legend and rumors out there that are not true. But if the Attorney General makes public statements, I think you could pretty much rely on those to be true.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you this, last 5 minutes here, my last question for you. So these people are sick. That's sort of a Q meme, and he's right. They are. And it's 100% true. But at this point, doesn't it start to feel a little bit like a revelation of the means? Meaning that they want us to know that we're surrounded and ruled by Luciferians in positions of power in politics, corporations, and Hollywood. And the example that I mentioned earlier, let me just flesh it out real quick. What was your thought on Marina Abramovic being in the latest Microsoft spot, sponsored by Christie's for her latest quote-unquote art installment, when we have Bill Gates being the front-facing vaccine pusher for this whole pandemic, his former company Microsoft sponsoring this woman, and here's the good news, the outcry against that commercial was so loud, calling her a Satanist, that Microsoft took it down after 2 days. But what were your thoughts on that? Because they just love to push this stuff in our faces.
Right. So when I look at things like that, to me, it just speaks of the fact that they're desperate. At this point, they're desperate to shove Marina Abramovic out there and do a commercials with her, that weird, oh, this is art. And, I want you to feel like you're in the room with me. And I got this, the virtual reality headsets and all that crap. And it's supported by Microsoft and Bill Gates and all that stuff. And Bill Gates, by the way, 3 weeks ago resigned as CEO of Microsoft. Wink, wink, for no apparent reason. They're desperate. I think the Rothschilds and George Soros and Bill Gates, they've got to be crapping their pants, because they know damn well that Durham is coming. They know, an article today in the New York or the Washington Examiner, Durham is spending multiple days a week sitting in a skiff reading classified documents about the CIA and the FBI and the DOJ and their little Spygate thing. They've got to be, they're pulling out all the stops. Like that Marina Abramovic commercial was just the craziest thing in the world. And the sheep no more, who are now awake, push back on that thing, and they're like, this is a bunch of satanic crap. Are you people crazy?
Yeah.
You're not going to give us your stupid vaccine. We're not taking this crap anymore. We're not sheep anymore. We know what you're doing, and we're not going to take it.
Yeah, look at the comments on Bill Gates' Instagram page. So they have to
pull it, and then New York Times runs a little, oh, don't be hurting Marina Abramovic. She's not a Satanist. She's a good person. She's just an artist, and she's misunderstood. When you have the deep state media writing cover articles for their satanic agenda, to me, it's hilarious, because it tells me that they're desperate and they don't know what to do next. Like, they're just desperate. They want this damn agenda to be forwarded. But Trump is crushing them every single day, and more of their corruption is being exposed, and it's going to continue to be exposed. And they're going to do more desperate things. I have no doubt between now and November, we're going to see more desperate measures by this global cabal of creepy people. And I don't even want to think about what they're going to try next, but I'm anticipating they're going to try some more stupid crap.
All right. Well, I make you this promise. If we see indictments of some of these top deep state criminals anytime between now and November, I'll have you back on and I will sing your praises. We all just want to take our country back. That's all. We just want life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and we are sick and tired of being governed by criminals, some of whom happen to be Satanists. All right, guys, my guest has been Dave Hayes, Praying Medic. Do you want to tell them how they can find your book and where else they can find you, Dave?
Yep. My book, Calm Before the Storm, is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Actually, that's under the name Dave Hayes. I have 13 books under the name Praying Medic. Amazon, Barnes & Noble. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I'm on YouTube. And if you cannot find me on social media, if they ever ban me from one of those platforms, go to prayingmedic.com. That is my website. All my videos and articles are there.
All right. Well, thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Be well, and we'll talk again soon.
All right, cool.
All right, friends, thank you so much for tuning in, guys. And for real news, check us out over at sgtreport.com. God bless. Bye-bye.
The sheriffs only report to the voters. The people are our only supervisors. I don't report to the president, to the governor, to the mayor, to the town manager, to the board of supervisors, to the county commissioners. Nobody is my supervisor except the people. And that's why we're a constitutional republic.